Now it is getting serious. Caesar ordered a huge fleet of warships to make sure Britain is getting Romanized. Let us see how things are going. Subscribe before starting. In the consulship of Lucius Domitius and Appius Claudius, Caesar, departing from his winter quarters and heading to Italy as he was accustomed to do every year, ordered the legates in charge of the legions to ensure as many ships as possible were built during the winter and to see that the old ones were repaired. He specified the size and design of these ships. He made them a bit lower than those typically used in our seas for the sake of faster loading and beaching, especially since he had observed that the tides in that region were frequent and thus the waves were smaller. He made them a bit broader than those used in other seas to accommodate cargo and a greater number of animals. He ordered that all these ships be built for rowing, which the low sides greatly facilitated. He instructed that the materials needed to outfit the ships be brought from Spain. After completing meetings in Cisalpine Gaul, he went to Illyricum, as he had heard that the neighboring part of the province was being ravaged by raids from the Parusta. When he arrived, he demanded soldiers from the communities and ordered them to gather at a designated place. When this was reported to the Parustae, they sent ambassadors to explain that the actions were not sanctioned by their public council, and to express their willingness to make amends in any way. Caesar, accepting their explanation, demanded hostages and set a date for their delivery, warning that if they failed to comply, he would wage war against their state. When the hostages were delivered on the appointed day, Caesar appointed arbitrators to assess the damages and determine the penalty. With these matters settled and the meetings concluded, Caesar returned to Cisalpine Gaul and then proceeded to the army. Upon his arrival, after touring all the winter quarters, he found that around 600 ships of the type previously described and 28 warships were equipped and nearly ready to launch within a few days, thanks to the extraordinary dedication of the soldiers despite the extreme scarcity of supplies. He praised the soldiers and those in charge of the work, outlined what he wanted done, and ordered everyone to assemble at the port of Aetius, from which he had learned was the most convenient crossing to Britain, about 30 miles across the channel. He left behind enough troops to carry out this task. He then set out with 4 light-armed legions and 800 cavalry into the territory of the Treveri, who neither attended his counsels nor obeyed orders, and were reportedly summoning the Transrhenane Germans. This tribe is by far the most powerful in all of Gaul in terms of cavalry and has substantial infantry forces, and, as previously mentioned, it borders the Rhine. In this tribe, there was a power struggle between Indutiomarus and Cingetorix. When news of Caesar's approach and the arrival of his legions reached them, Cingetorix immediately came to Caesar, promising that he and all his followers would remain loyal and not abandon the friendship of the Roman people, and he reported on the activities in the Treveri. Indutiomarus, on the other hand, began to gather cavalry and infantry, hiding those unable to bear arms in the Arduina forest, which stretches across the middle of the Treveri territory from the Rhine to the borders of the Remi, and prepared for war. However, when some of the leaders of the tribe, influenced by their relationship with Cingetorix and fearing the approach of our army, came to Caesar to seek protection for their private interests, since they could not safeguard the state, Indutiomarus, fearing that everyone would desert him, sent envoys to Caesar. He explained that his withdrawal and refusal to come to Caesar earlier were to better control his tribe and keep them from lapsing into error due to the withdrawal of all the nobility. He stated that the tribe was under his control and that he would come to Caesar's camp if permitted and place himself and the tribe's fortunes under Caesar's protection. Caesar, understanding the real reason behind these declarations and the attempt to divert him from his planned course, yet not wanting to spend the summer with the Treveri after all the preparations for the British campaign, ordered Indutiomarus to come to him with 200 hostages. When these were delivered, including his son and all his close relatives, whom Caesar had specifically summoned, Caesar consoled Indutiomarus and encouraged him to remain loyal. Nevertheless, Caesar also convened the leading men of the Treveri individually and allied them with Cingetorix, as he believed that, given Cingetorix's demonstrated loyalty, it was important for his influence to be strong among his people. Indutiomarus, seeing his influence wane and feeling increasingly hostile towards the Romans, was deeply angered by this turn of events. With these arrangements completed, Caesar arrived at the port of Aetius with the legions. There, he learned that 60 ships built among the Meldi had been driven back by storms and had returned to the port from which they had set out, while the remaining ships were ready for sailing and fully equipped. All the cavalry of Gaul, numbering around 4,000, and the leaders from all the tribes gathered there. From these, Caesar decided to leave a few in Gaul, whose loyalty he had tested, and take the others with him as hostages, fearing that a rebellion might break out in Gaul during his absence. Among them was Dumnorix the Aeduan, about whom Caesar had previously spoken. Caesar had decided to take him with him, knowing him to be ambitious, desirous of power, influential among the Gauls, and of great authority. Additionally, Dumnorix had declared in a council of the Aedui that Caesar intended to make him king of his tribe, a statement that the Aedui found troubling and which they did not dare to send envoys to Caesar to refute or plead against. Caesar had learned of this from his own allies. At first, Dumnorix tried by all means to be left behind in Gaul, claiming that he was not used to sailing and feared the sea, and that religious obligations detained him. When he saw that his request was firmly denied, he began to incite the Gallic leaders, urging them to stay on the continent and using fear tactics, suggesting that Caesar intended to strip Gaul of all its nobility. He claimed that Caesar's plan was to take them to Britain and kill them there, away from the eyes of the Gallic people. He invoked loyalty from the others and demanded an oath that they would act in the best interest of Gaul based on their common understanding. Several reported these conversations to Caesar. Upon learning this, Caesar, valuing the dignity of the Aeduan tribe, decided to restrain and control Dumnorix by any means necessary, fearing his further audacity. Spending about 25 days in that place because unfavorable winds hindered navigation, he made efforts to keep Dumnorix under control while being fully informed of all his plans. When the weather became favorable, he ordered the soldiers and cavalry to embark on the ships. But Dumnorix, with the Aeduan cavalry, began to leave the camp without Caesar's knowledge. When Caesar was informed, he halted the departure, sent a large part of his cavalry to pursue Dumnorix, and ordered them to bring him back or kill him if he resisted. He believed that Dumnorix, who had defied orders in his presence, would not obey in his absence. When Dumnorix was caught and resisted, defending himself and calling on his men to assist him, declaring that he was free and belonged to a free state, the soldiers surrounded and killed him. The Aeduan cavalry returned to Caesar. With these matters settled, Caesar left Labienus on the continent with 3 legions and 2,000 cavalry to guard the port, procure provisions, and manage any events in Gaul, making decisions based on the circumstances. He himself set sail at sunset with 5 legions and the same number of cavalry he had left on the continent. Pushed by a gentle southwest wind, he lost his course around midnight when the wind died, and was carried farther off by the tide. At dawn, he saw Britain on his left. Following the tide's change, he rowed hard to reach the part of the island he had learned the previous summer was the best for landing. The soldiers' courage was commendable, as they matched the speed of the warships despite being in heavy transport vessels. They reached Britain around noon, and no enemy was seen in that area. Later, Caesar learned from captives that large enemy forces had gathered there, but terrified by the sight of over 800 ships, counting both the fleet built the previous year and private vessels, they had retreated inland. The Britons are now terrified by the power of Caesar. What is next? Subscribe to the channel to get the next video on Caesar's conquer of Britain.